Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game news, interviews, reviews, game design podcast. I am Shawn Merwin and I am back here with Teos Abadia. Hey Teos, did you survive without me?
I did, thanks to
Yeah,
Graham, who's amazing, like rolls with
Graham, yeah.
everything. So smart, and love talking to him about 100 Dungeons. You're always missed. We talked about you, of course, but it was I had a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying after the show reading more closely the copy of 100 Dungeons I have. So that's super cool.
Yeah. Yep. And I am back almost in time for April Fool's Day. We don't we record the day before and the show will come out the day after, so we sort of miss the April Fool's Day, but our listeners, they are certainly not fools, because we did ask them if we did an April Fool's episode, what should we cover, and we got quite a list of ideas. The first one, right off the top, a review of the 6-page Fishblade RPG. I know who said that one. Didn't even need to see the list. I know that Andrew did that, where you play a fish with a blade wrong by a fish catcher. So no, we are not going to be doing that. Or
I thought,
one or 30-part series.
yeah, I immediately thought, I bet we could stretch our review out into like a multi, if not 30 parts, pretty close to it. Just give our review of Frost Maiden a run for the money.
Yeah, yeah. And then we would get crap from Mike Shea about, could you have covered it in any more detail?
And then that one person that's like, could you guys do another thing like that Frost Maiden review? That was awesome. And thank you to that
Right.
one person.
Thank you, one person who really enjoyed the 78-part series that we did on Rime of the Frostmaiden. What other things did our listeners claim that they thought we should do for April Fools?
Yeah, the massive resurgence in market share by Tunnels and Trolls, and maybe why D&D should be quaking in its boots over it. You could really put in any number of, the Quest RPG, anything like that. I think that would be a great April Fool's episode. If we just really jumped into that kind of conspiracy mindset of how D&D is about to just fall apart and be taken over by Game X. And then this one was really great. A crossover with the Eldritch Lorecast in the style of Family Feud. And then before too long, it devolved into this conversation back and forth of like, what do you do with you, Shawn? Since you would be on both teams, like, do you roll to see who you happen to be answering for? Would it be completely unfair because I would be a team of one?
Yeah. Well, I could get up at the podium there where they hit the button for the first thing, and I could just be both sides, and we'll see which hand comes down first.
I would just answer making whoopee to everything, because I think that's the fine tradition of the show.
No, that's actually the Newlywed Game.
That too.
But
yeah.
I'm old, so I forgive you.
Yeah. Sex in uncomfortable places, like the back of a Volkswagen, right? That whole thing. But even this got so far that there is actually a thread on our Patreon Discord listing questions that could be used for this Family Feud. So, get back to your folks at Eldritch Lorecast and let them know that we should do this. Mm-hmm.
It's on. Yeah, we actually talked about in the Eldritch Lorecast, it would be funny to send 2 people from that show to do this.
That would be great.
We go over there. It would have been funny. I'm too slow.
One day for April Fools, we should do something like that. That would actually be really funny.
We will absolutely figure that out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody suggested we report on a fake WotC Hasbro executive shakeup, such as Chris Cox being out in a pool full of manatees, selecting random words, being hired to replace Chris Cox. Jeremy Crawford resigning to run a fancy dog hotel, being replaced by a broom with a sign that says this edition is bigger and better than ever.
Yeah.
So that would work.
I thought, when I heard this, I just thought, well, the natural thing would be that Chris Cox has been replaced by an AI, or in fact, his brain has been put into a case and is now powering the, Hasbro AI, which we could call Gleemax, and will self-power the version 2.0 of Sigil, the new combination virtual tabletop, Steam Marketplace, perpetually profitable video game spawner, DM assistant, and of course, the D&D version of Fortnite. I think that would be great.
I think I could see the shareholders getting very excited about that. I can see the stock just taking off.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody suggested the Best of Dragon Magazine's April Fool's article, and then adding that would be a very, very short episode. Obviously, those weren't much appreciated. And there were definitely some that were taken too seriously, and then some articles that were nowhere near April Fool's, but I figured should be
Yeah,
April Fool's
very
jokes.
true.
So, mhm.
Yeah, you know, a little bit of trivia, but the only appearance of a flump in fourth edition was an April Fool's magazine article. Sad.
Oh, that is
How,
sad. That is
how
sad.
times changed.
Uh, for the law conscious out there, we have legal lore you should know: the difference between killing a player and killing a character. Coming in second is the difference between rogue and rouge, an in-depth look. We could probably go out for 4 or 5 episodes about switching the U and the G.
I still laugh. There was a time on the fourth edition forums where someone did a as if it was real review of the book Going Rogue by what's her name, politician. We don't even have to name her.
Oh, right, right, right.
And it was all about how this is such a disappointing optimization manual. It does not tell you which powers to choose, and it just went on and on. It was like a really long post all about how that book was not a good guide to playing fourth edition rogues. I love that.
Awesome. We have the 2024 Monster Creation Guidelines, subtitled "When Two Bugbears Love Each Other Very Much."
Mm, yeah.
That's a shame.
I
What
loved
else?
a deep dive into why Eric the Cavalier from the cartoon is the pinnacle of how to write or play a heroic D&D character. That's really good. If you've watched that cartoon and his whining, like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that would be a very short campaign. Speaking of killing players and or characters, that might come in there. Mastering dungeons is obviously mostly about Dungeons and Dragons, so our all traveler episode will be called Mastering Space.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mhm.
It's a splinter video.
Yep.
We might divide our audience over it, but what can you do? It has to be
Yeah.
done. The top 5 clickbaity Wizards of the Coast hating D&D videos, and then the person wrote, actually never do that.
I was going to say that is probably what most of these influencer type places do. If I know that we people get so mad at the Eldritch Lorecast because they jokingly put up these fake outrage faced, headline things, and then we end up not doing that. We do the opposite.
Right,
So some people
right,
get mad because we do it in the first place, and some people get mad because we do it, but then are not outraged enough. So
right.
we really upset everyone there, which I guess is a good tagline to have.
Yeah,
Yes, we can upset you too.
I usually listen on Twitch, and so I don't know what the episode's going to be called, and I just, I listen to it while I'm working out. And then I see the thumbnail and I go, that was what the episode was about. And that always makes me laugh. But we had a number of flump related submissions. Thank you to everybody. How about a segment on flumps and flail snails? A report on Wizards Coast dropping their flump equity inclusion efforts. Too real, too real. Flumps in space. What else, Shawn?
Oh, we got the fantasy draft, the best monster in each CR bracket, the best NPC in each setting, all of that. And actually that's not even an April Fool's thing. I think I could see us in the near future doing a sort of bracket of something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
with your enthusiasm for the NCAA tournament, March
What?
Madness, and
I don't know what you're talking
Duke's
about, Shawn.
Duke's
I don't.
potential ouster next weekend. I mean,
Whoa, whoa,
Duke's
hey, that's not all right.
Duke's
Look, some of us are a bit of a
inevitable
fan. It's
triumph.
true, just a little
Yeah,
bit,
right.
But we're
Uh-huh.
reasonable. We're in control.
Right. And for those of you listening on the podcast, Teos is waving Duke flags, wearing Duke devil horns with a Duke banner in the background. And I can't see his shirt, but if it's not written on the outside, probably on the inside somewhere, or the boxers
Yeah,
are
doesn't everybody
probably
wear Duke underwear?
themed.
Come on, it's normal.
Yeah. And this one actually seemed a little bit serious. How to fool players as a DM.
I actually
Uh,
like that as a topic a
yeah.
lot because it's hard, right? That building up your poker face, knowing what to say to like not have them smell that you are the evil guy or that this is a trap or whatever. That's a skill.
It is a skill. It is a skill.
Transferable to the workplace. Am I
Yeah, that's
right?
something that we'll put on there. So
Yeah.
thank you, everyone out there who joined us in our Discord server to talk about those things. And there are great conversations going on every day in that Discord server. Many
Yeah.
great creators in there, uh, great fans in there. So if you haven't checked it out, I would suggest you do so at some point. And of course, we're also on YouTube, and this is where our question of the day here comes in from Raul Woolhorst via YouTube. Thanks for the interesting insights on encounter building. Throughout much of your conversation, I couldn't help but wonder how one would best account for interesting environmental effects in terms of encounter math. At some point, you alleviated my ruminations and suggested a heuristic to consider encounters with additional environmental things as one category higher on the difficulty scale. It's a good solution that saves DMs a lot of headaches. But does that mean we shouldn't create hard encounters with dangerous environments? Can those only have very minor, interesting, or fun things to interact with? That seems anticlimactic, given hard probably means a boss encounter. How would you go about integrating the math for environmental dangers into the hard category? Thanks. So, Teos, you are the one who's been doing a lot of this math on
Mhm.
monsters and encounters. And so I wrote my answer down, but I'm going to turn it over to you there.
Okay. So I mean, the beauty math wise, and again, like I consider myself the verbal SAT side, not the math SAT side, but I have to own that I keep talking about math, and that's true. But what I loved about fourth edition, and I said this last episode, was that the math could be ignored and you could just think in logical groupings like your building block type thing. And that was great because you could say, I'm going to put in a level 4 trap, which is like a level 4 monster, or a level 4 elite trap, which is like 2 level 4 monsters. And I should have 4 of them if I have, level 4 level 4 things, then that equals 4 level 4 PCs. And that was just such a great bit of logic because there was math, it was sound, but also just transparent. And the problem with 5th edition is even the monsters aren't true logical blocks to each other. And then the traps, there's no easy way to equate them across. One thing you can think of it, if it's a straight up damaging thing, then you can think of it as a monster, right? And that is actually what 4th edition did behind the scenes. What it said was this trap requires, a general trap in 4th edition requires 4 checks to defeat, meaning it takes 4 rounds to defeat it, just like a monster was thought to require 4 hits, across the 4 rounds worth of damage to take out. So that's why they could then do a very easy, like this lasts as long as a monster, so it's like a monster, and it should dish damage out at the same rate as a monster would. So it's just kind of a different thing. If you can pull that off, like if the design of your trap or your damaging terrain or whatever is really equivalent to a monster, then that's what you can do. It is a monster, right?
Yep.
The more that you can't do that because it's doing things like, I don't know, putting your slowing your targets or the player characters, or it sometimes does damage, sometimes doesn't. Then you just have to think through the combination of your players, assuming this is home game, and what you're adding to the encounter, right? So like a lot of DMs go, oh, it's so hard to threaten my players. Well, then don't worry about it. Add some damaging terrain, have at it, and just be ready to improvise a bit, right? But if you are doing it for publication, then the more that you need to think about how does this equate to either a monster or even going one or two ways. Either, as Shawn said before, you go across from like the hard to difficult kind of thing, or whatever, I've now forgotten what the new names of my moderate to difficult, moderate, or hard, whatever it is, one over on that axis, or go down as if the characters were one level higher. And both of those can be ways to approximate this or in this case, you would you would consider the challenge as if they were one level higher, but they're actually, you could go one level lower in terms of the math you use
Yeah.
to replicate for that. So fewer monsters because you treat them as if they're a level lower. That makes sense. What do you think,
Yeah,
Shawn?
and that absolutely makes sense. And I sort of walk through my approach in my mind.
Yeah,
If I'm creating something, so this is what I do.
love
The
it.
first thing is, can I treat it like a monster? If it does damage, if it imposes effects, and it can be eliminated like a monster might through checks rather than damage, then I do exactly what you talked about for fourth edition. I will say, all right, this is a CR4 effect suite
Yeah.
because it does 6 points of damage around. It can be taken out after 6 successful checks, et cetera, et cetera. If it's severe, I'm not going to treat it like a monster, but it's very severe, then I will raise the difficulty by one full thing. This would be things that continually damages characters, that imposes harsh effects with a very high DC or automatically imposes these effects. If it's light, then I might raise the difficulty by a half step. So I would make an easy encounter, sort of an easy and a half encounter, and then put the effect in, and it comes up to moderate,
Mhm.
right? So, or like you said, that's an even better solution sometimes is instead of making this for fifth level characters, I'm making it for fourth level characters with the knowledge that these effects will be more difficult. Um,
Yeah.
if it's very light or very easy to get around or avoid or undo altogether, then there's no adjustment at all. And I think in a lot of cases, that is where I come down on things
Yeah.
because while players might say, ooh, that encounter was unfair because we had difficult terrain in the area, well, yeah, but maybe you're all ranged characters and that really only mattered for one of the players. Maybe you could all fly. Maybe you all did area of effect damage. And so movement wasn't really even
Right.
a big deal. And so that's what I then go to is thinking about are these effects really disadvantageous to the players? Are they disadvantageous enough
Mm.
to even consider? Uh, and that's where like making a boss fight that's hard becomes a can I add effects to it? That's when you start thinking it through.
Yeah.
Uh, and the answer is generally what level are the characters?
Mm.
Are they levels 1 to 4? Then effects could be a big deal.
Yeah.
Once you get fifth level and higher, even those effects that may seem quite rough can generally be overcome by magic or abilities or just ignored completely. Uh, right?
Yeah.
You're fighting in a volcano, and the heat of the place does 5 points of damage to every character every round until the 13th level wizard just says, "Well, I cast whatever spell that
Yeah.
gets rid of get that makes us invulnerable, makes us resistant, makes us immune to heat." And I wasted an action casting a spell that's going to stop 80 points of damage over the course of the battle. That's a round well spent. Uh, so right, you really have to break it down. Look at does it affect all creatures? Does it affect all creatures evenly? Right, all of those things. And I used to really sweat about it, and I don't sweat about it as much anymore.
Yeah. I think the biggest things are thinking through whether this really truly is going to have such a huge impact that
Mhm.
you might, like, say, TPK the party or create it into a slugfest. Like, I designed an encounter once that had a pillar that could dominate you, which I
Mhm.
think comes out of the DMG, or if not, there was something similar. This was in fourth edition.
Mhm.
But then I also had Medusas, which can slow and dominate you.
Mhm.
And even though dominating in this encounter was rewritten to not take away your entire action, it was tough because
Mhm.
we got a playtest report in from a table of 4 players, where one was
Okay.
dominated by the pillar, two were kind of controlled in various ways by Medusas, and it left one really actually active character. And so that was
Right.
terrible design. That's on me. When I got the playtest reports, I said, okay, first of all, if you have fewer than 5 characters, the pillar is not there, right? That was
Right.
important. and then adjusting some things in the spacing and so on so that it could still be a better challenge and more reasonable while still being about control, because it was the focus. It's not that I didn't have these intended effects. It just was too much to where it could end up being incredibly frustrating play. And so when you're designing for home use, what I like to do is think, if by some chance I have screwed up, what's my control valve, right? So you could do something like, oh, you know what? The pillar can be disabled with a single check. Right. And you can just tell the rogue that, right? And then they know, okay, if I get there and I turn this off, it's done. Now we just focus on the Medusas or whatever. And that kind of a thing. Just give yourself, what could the out be for this thing? I've got this fire that's falling, but maybe there's a thing they can use as cover, or an area that they could fight. They could topple something to make cover. You think about those kinds of options and you say, I'm not going to bring them up unless they become necessary. And then that's my escape valve that'll let me fix the encounter on the fly.
Yep. And you raise a good point there with these effects, with these extra quirks to a battle or to an encounter at all. That knowledge is just as important as what's there, right? Do the characters automatically know these things are happening and how to stop them?
Yeah.
Or do they need to make checks to know?
Right.
And that sort of lever is a lever you can throw to make it easier or make it harder. In order to see that this altar is doing this necrotic damage to us every round, you need to make a check. Oh, no, you don't need to make the check. Because you can see that this altar is doing this, and you know exactly how to fix it, which is get next to it and make a religion check to say the right prayer to turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now now it's going to take 1 round as opposed to taking 4 rounds, as opposed to taking 80 rounds to figure that out. So yeah, but again, it's like the design you talk about, especially for 5th edition, there's no one mathematical way to get it exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a matter of thinking through all the contingencies. And if you're lucky enough to just be running for one group and you know what each of these characters can do, you can literally specifically tailor it. This character has Misty Step 5 times per day. So I am going to put in things where they need to Misty Step to these different platforms.
Yeah.
Or in case that character can't, the barbarian, who has a climb speed, can climb to them as a secondary. You can really tailor it in that way.
I think I wrote the first Paragon adventure, or maybe it was one of the second. I think it might have been the second tier 2 Paragon or something like that. And so it was a first, but it was early enough in the edition of 4th, and early enough in the 4th edition cycle that everyone was basically using the player's handbook and 1 or 2 other things. And I knew that a number of DMs would have and I forget the name of it, but essentially it's like an arcane bridge that you just go from one spot to another. Yeah. And so I put in this adventure, a sort of Indiana Jones style wall coming down to seal off the thing you came for. And so many players would just go, I have this. And they felt like they were beating me, like, haha, you stupid DM, you didn't see this coming. And I would just smile and go, like, oh, that's amazing, dude. But I literally wrote that for them. It was there. And there were a couple of other classes that could do things like that too. But I knew that there would be a few ways that they could do that. Or they could just simply do nothing but move and they could get to it, right? Just sacrifice actually doing attacks. But the people that would pop out that arcane bridge would just feel so good about it. And that was a huge part of the reward, was in fact them defeating the trap was super fun.
Yep. So thank you for that question. I hope that non-answer is a good enough answer to that question. Now let's jump into our news and commentary section, starting with Anjali Bhimani publishing The Malady of Minar on D&D Beyond. If you watch live streams or television shows, you may know Anjali from many different series, voice actor, etc. She has published this adventure, which goes from 2 or 3 sessions for 5th level adventures, edited by a friend of the show, Hannah Rose. This has now become available on D&D Beyond. Can you tell us a little about the adventure, Teos?
Sure. There is a quiet village that is now threatened by a deathly plague, and the village healer has gone missing. So this will require you to go to hidden crypts and overcome ancient evil forces, all to solve the mystery of why this is all going down. Quote, it has themes of religious fanaticism, the conflict between outsider and community, the dangers of theocracy, and how love and acceptance hold power in even the darkest times. And this was published through Road to Ithaca Press, which is a publishing company that Anjali owns. And in an interview to Game Rant, she was saying she hopes to develop and publish more D&D books in the future. It's the first adventure she's written, at least to this level of publication. So on a D&D Beyond video, she also talks about the challenges of doing that and overthinking things, and then the value of having a good editor that, points things out to you and tells you, no, it's okay. Here's what we want to do, and so on.
Yep. You could do much, much worse than having Hannah Rose edit your first adventure that's going to go up on D&D Beyond.
Yep.
And so we have links in the show notes to the marketplace on D&D Beyond, some YouTube video where you could see more about it, and then the Game Rant article. We are getting new minis for the Sigil virtual tabletop.
Oh, that's a funny April Fool's. Good job, Shawn. You got us. We believed you.
So the D&D account on Bluesky posted pictures of 2 Mimic minis, saying that they can be claimed from the D&D Beyond marketplace at no cost. One of the Mimics is a chest, and the other is the Mimic after it reveals itself. Mm-hmm. In a marketing email, a Dwarven armor pack is provided, and we are told an Animals pack and a Gelatinous Cube cleanup crew pack will be coming soon. So, Teos, I'm going to let you do the editorial stuff here.
Yeah, I'll add. You know me. When I saw this, I was just like, really? Like, wait. So what happened? Did somebody in the department go, wait? When we fired 30 out of 33 staff members, we didn't want people to not use the tool. We just wanted to save on all the costs and stop spending money on this. Bring them back. They got to use it. So give them some minis. Was that the plan? Or and were these packs that they were going to sell? Were they going to sell us a gelatinous cube and an animals pack? And now they, have to just give it to us for free to try to get us to use it. What do you think, Shawn?
I think that when Ford or General Motors lays off 20% of their workforce, we still buy Ford and we still buy GM. Mm-hmm. I think that while that, as you well know, this whole Sigil thing has been quite the fiasco. It's still there. Mm-hmm. It's still there. There are still people maintaining it, a much smaller force than created it.
But good people.
This is something that I think that they're hoping we are going to use it.
Yeah.
It's still a perk for being a member of the D&D Beyond.
Yeah, the master tier and all that.
Yeah, master tier. So, right, I understand the snickering. I understand what's going on here. But, I also know that they are going to be hoping that people use it. So one of the things they're doing is giving away stuff to use on it. And probably they were hoping to sell these things at some point. And now they're not. So now we will probably see free stuff coming every now and again to use on the virtual tabletop. And, I sort of roll my eyes, but I also don't go out of my way to beat the horse that long ago perished about this. It's still going to be great for the people that use it. And for those of us who continue to not use it, it's still nothing.
Well, let's move on to some good news, Shawn.
Let's move on to Pelgrane Press naming Robin Laws as creative director. Robin has worked with Pelgrane Press for as long as Pelgrane Press has been around, because their first RPG was called The Dying Earth, and that was created by Robin Laws. Now he is officially the creative director. Quote here, as creative director, Robin will be steering the creative ship across all our projects, bringing fresh ideas, evaluating our storytelling, developing new writers, and ensuring everything we put out into the world feels unmistakably us.
Great.
And my thought was, he's not creative director already. I just assumed that he worked for them and was
Well, this is
involved in everything they did.
I think this is like the flip side of our previous story, right? This is like when you're dealing with small companies, you can think a thing is a thing, and then you realize,
Yeah,
no, like, he's probably has been a freelancer forever or something, and now
right.
this is like, after all these years, despite developing their first RPG and everything gumshoe and all of this,
Yeah,
well, now it's an official relationship, and that's how it sometimes goes with small companies. And I
right.
mean, yeah, and not everybody knows those relationships. They become confusing. In fact, I had a call from somebody through a friend of a friend who wanted to ask me about what it's like to work at Wizards. And I said, well, I'm not actually an employee there. And they were, really?
Yeah. And that's the thing with some of these smaller companies. I I don't know why sometimes a freelancer who is as popular and as well published and as respected as Robin Laws would join a company full time.
Right.
Oh, and that's just, I don't know anything about Robin's situation. I don't know anything about
Hmm.
Pelgrane Press, but just in general, it's like, does that benefit you?
Hmm.
Is it, why haven't you always worked there? Is why now?
What
Right?
changed?
All
Yeah.
of these other
Yeah.
questions, I start putting myself into their shoes and
Yeah.
say, why now? But Robin does great work, obviously, well respected in the RPG industry, obviously. So congratulations to Robin and
Yeah.
congratulations to Pelgrane Press. And here's looking for years more of great content from them. I still have the Trail of Cthulhu second edition PDF sitting on my desktop waiting to be opened. And maybe in 8 to 10 months, I will be able to do so.
Yeah. I always wait for the print copy. So I know it's there. I'm excited about it. But when that print arrives, that's when I'll really dig into it.
There you go. Next, we have news on how D&D can help with environmental education, and we are slinging well into the bailiwick of one Mr. Teos Abadia on this one, so I'm going to hand that over.
Yeah, so on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast and speakupforblue.com, there's an episode that highlights the works of Dr. Andrew Thaler, who is using D&D to create immersive story-driven experiences that engage students on a more deeper personal level. And we hear this a lot, right? We see psychiatrists using it. We see all kinds of folks using D&D. And in this case, the quote is, through world building, role playing, and strategic storytelling, students aren't just learning, they're adventuring through ecosystems, facing climate-related challenges, and discovering how natural systems work in real time. I really love that. It's a great idea. So you can check out this story out at speakupforblue.com. You can even, on that same page, get a discount on a related DMs Guild product on the site and hear the podcast and much more.
Excellent. And if you run that at a convention, we now have a blog giving us 28 ideas for running role-playing games at conventions. The blog is called Not Hollow, Knot Hollow, and they have a list of 28 tips for running convention games. I did a quick spin through them, and most of them are sort of the common, what's the word I'm looking for? Common wisdom,
Yeah.
sort of the folk wisdom of this is how you should do it. And as with any of those lists, I'm like, yep, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope. So I thought we would just go through a few and
Sure.
see where we stand.
Well, you didn't talk about number one. I'm going to throw that one right in there
Do it.
because number one is one of my favorites, which is provide name tags or table tents so players can display their own names and their character names. And I think for con games, where you're often trying to get people into the moment, nothing is just an easier win than a folded piece of paper for people to write their name on, right? It can just be an index card and it's a win. But if you made pre-gens, you can actually go even further, right? With a picture or a description, just especially in things that are like modern or space, whatever, just knowing that I'm the engineer, right? And, maybe like a thing like grouchy or whatever I'm known for, right? That kind of thing just helps so much. But getting people to use each other's character names it encourages that communication. When you have no name, it's almost like a barrier. You don't even want to go like, hey, you just don't even communicate, right? Is the natural human tendency. So to me, that's a huge one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to number three because I thought this was really important, and maybe even not for the reason that the person
Mm,
thought. It's do some sort of intro, getting to know you with the players, even if it seems cheesy.
mm,
And number four is definitely introduce yourself. Be vulnerable, let the players know you, build up some credibility, be friendly, and give
mm.
them a reason to trust you. And both of these things, I think, are hugely important, especially for the
Yeah,
game master, but even for the players.
yeah,
Because I always start with, "Hi, I'm Shawn," and say one thing about myself, where I'm from. If I came across the country or go to a different country, I'll say I'm from Buffalo area. Uh, but then I let the players just introduce yourself, even if you just say your name. And what this does is it gets players comfortable saying something. If
yeah,
they're a little shy, the easiest thing to do is, "Hi, I'm Phil. Hi, I'm Susie."
yeah,
And right, that's all you need to do. But if they do have something to add, something interesting, you as the game master are learning a little bit about that person,
mm,
and that knowledge can be translated once the game starts. All right, this person is shy, so I'm gonna treat them a little differently than I'm treating this person
yeah,
who just went off on a 3 minute spiel about something.
yeah.
That's the
That-
person I
yeah.
know that I can count on to talk if I need someone to talk other than me.
That's why I use my montage technique because it's generally communicable. It might be a little harder in today's era, but there are enough people around who remember what an 80s montage was like, which would
Mhm.
be just a short snippet meant to encapsulate what the character is on a show while a theme song plays. And usually people laugh thinking about the idea there's some fictitious theme song in our heads. And I
Right.
look around the table as I explain what I want, and someone will be going like, "Oh, I got it,"
Uh-huh.
right? So I'll start with them. And almost always, they will do something fun like you see a dashing rogue run out of a tavern, do a somersault, grab the keys off a guard, open the so and so and pull out a drink and, look at the camera. And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
And what's your name? And I jot down their name. And then the
Yep.
next person goes and just that first person does it. Everybody else usually does a really sound job of moving beyond the you see an elf with a big bow.
Hmm. Yep.
Like it gets you to that next level and really helps a lot. And then combined with name tense, everybody
Yep.
can now do it, right? Yeah.
Very, very good. Two games come to mind when you say that. Brindlewood Bay
Mm.
does a short version of that in terms of introducing your character, and Dusk City Outlaws by Rodney
Yes.
Thompson does a longer scene, like not the 10-second.
Yeah.
What do you care? What does the character do in the opening credits? It's the first scene of this movie that's 2 or 3 minutes long. What is the character doing?
That's
So
cool.
both great games, and backs up what Teos said there. Uh, then I jump to number six, which is have a plan to deal with the player who's on their cell phone all the time. Put a stop to it and don't waste game time telling them what they missed. And for me, this is half right. Right. If you're standing there at a game, and I stand while I DM if possible. So if I'm standing there and I see somebody that's on their cell phone, it's not my job to be the cell phone police because I don't know them. I don't know the situation that they're
Yeah.
in. I don't know if they have an emergency at home and they're right trying to deal with something. So it's not my job. I'm not going to put a stop to it. I'm not a teacher in a classroom. I'm not a boss at work. I am running a game for people who likely paid to be there. So while I agree that I am not going to waste time if they are missing things because they are turning their focus
Mhm.
elsewhere, I will also take the time to explain if they ask. And if it gets to be obnoxious, then maybe I'll take a break and I'll ask the person, "Is everything okay? I've
Yeah.
noticed that you're not paying attention. And then when it's your turn, it's really slowing the game down. Is there anything I can do?" Right? Rather
Yeah.
than being confrontational, try to be supportive.
Yeah. Yeah, I've run for some folks who they seem to need it as an almost I'm doing something else.
Mhm.
And this includes folks who like say knit at the table, right? And I remember one time there was a group there was a person who they'd play together and one of them would always be knitting and kind of never know what's going on. And post game somehow someone said like, "Oh yeah, it's kind of how the other person supports the other. And if you want the one, this is kind of what comes with it, because it's the only way they get to play. And I had a lot more compassion for that situation, right? Like, this is someone trying to support the other, kind of what they like, kind of participating. Is it the best for everybody else at the table? No, but I'm a lot more understanding, kind of hearing that background. And I've had folks who said, like, like, I can't just sit at the table looking, it does things for me. And so I need to have a thing I look at. So I look at my phone, but I'm trying to pay attention. And then I've had people who just played a video game at the table because they're trying to multitask and they're addicted to their phone game. And it just is what it is. There was a guy I used to regularly run for that would do that. And, I wondered why they were there, but they clearly kept coming, and so, it was never big enough that I tried to get in the way of it. But as you said, I don't see my role as, if it's my friends and I'm, but a con game, just like roll with it.
Yep. Let's see. There's a couple of there. Number 14 was have a really cool map. And then in parentheses, which could mean many things. And my thought was, so what are those many things? So the better advice there is know where you want the player's attention to be at all times during the game. And then create things and experiences that keeps the attention where you want it to be. So a cool map, great. Unless you don't want people staring at the cool map while you're trying to do something else. So
or
cool
if the layout doesn't matter, then what's the point of the cool map, right? Like,
Right. So, and it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be a prop in your hand. It could be the tone of your voice, right? Whatever the attention gathering part of your presentation is and where you want to focus, put the focus there. 26. It's perfectly okay to just take a moment to look at the rules. It's better than spending 5 minutes hemming and hawing about something you can't remember. And for me, no. Don't take a moment to look at the rules. Don't hem and haw for 5 minutes either. Move on. Ask the player, oh, okay, I don't remember how that spell works, so we're going to say it does this. Look it up in case you cast it next time. I'm going to move on to the next player in initiative. Because a moment to look up the rules is fine if it's 30 seconds. But if you need to pull out a book, or if you need to pull out your cell phone and you need to type in the search and you need to scroll and you're already probably coming up on 5 minutes anyway. So just know that.
This is a case where role-playing games and basketball are exactly the same, and it's something that drives me at the wall, which is that stopping play to figure out whether you perfectly got the call right sounds great in theory, but is more impactful. That pause in the action is more impactful than actually what the rule does one way or the other. And you can see this in basketball games where a delay for any reason, an injury, a call, whatever, will absolutely change the way the game is played. That happens at role-playing games too. Everybody suddenly becomes distracted. Phones will come out, people, are away. The whole thing you did on pacing has just died as you go to look that up. No, my easy rule is I rule in the favor of whatever the player is telling me. Because often these are situations that player is saying, I think I can do X because of Y. I don't know that that's true, but I want to move on. So let's say it is, and let's move on. If I just made the encounter too easy, I can compensate, but just rule in their favor and move on, because it's not worth the drop to the pacing and all of that.
Right. Now, on the other side of things, if you're playing an 8-hour game, and you're well ahead of time, then you may want to say, hey, interesting, let's look that up, because I am so far ahead of where I'm supposed to be, and I need to slow down a bit. I need to catch my breath. Why don't we take 5 minutes, go get a drink, take a bio break, and we'll look this up, right? It all depends on the situation. But if you're in a 3-hour or 2-hour slot, 3 minutes is a long time.
I would still go to like the end of the encounter or something like that and call a break, because the other thing is that it often helps you a bit. Like, let's say you had something like a player that has figured out, they believe, how their character can cast 5 spells around. Right? And so that is really bad. That is destructive. Going through the encounter will show how destructive that is. and you'll make a better case at the end of the encounter of like, hey, you're doing 5 more things than everybody else every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we can find a way in the rules to validate this, I feel like we should pull back somewhat. Can we meet halfway? You know, like you do this once per encounter or something like that, but you know, something to back off of it because it's just not fun for everybody else, right?
Yeah. And any other ones that pop out to you?
I didn't make a note of them like you did, which thank you. I just found this was a good source to look at. As you've pointed out, they're not all perfect, and some of them I do disagree with. But I thought these are a nice thought process, and I think the more that you DM in public, you want to think through lists like this and have some preparations for this. And this is true whether it's at conventions physically or digitally. You want to think about that. You know, one of my big ones is timing. When I'm preparing an adventure for convention play, the clock is a big part of it because that's pacing. That's also when you've got to leave the table. You'll impact others. You'll impact the players if you run late. Finishing early is a win for almost everybody, yourself included, but certainly the players who need to get to another table. So I always write down what is the expected length of this encounter. It has to all add up. I want to end a little early, so I need to, you know, be less than 4 hours or whatever the slot is. So that timing is super critical. And knowing how to treat when you need to cut or add, that is important to think through, right? Most people don't love it when you just go, and let's just hand wave this. So thinking through how you're going to make those cuts is important.
Yeah. So I skipped a lot, and if I did, it's because I agree with it. So it's a great list. I didn't mean to be overly critical. And we have a link in our show notes to the Not Hollow blog. GaryCon report on Shadowdark sales. What did Ben Riggs have to say with Kelsey Dion here, Teos?
Yeah, so he captured the audio of a session at GaryCon that Kelsey Dion, Shadowdark's creator, ran. And it's super fun. You get to hear Kelsey answering all these questions from folks. And that included some really kind of interesting things. One of which was the sales numbers. Around 40,000 core books in physical copies have been sold. Maybe 3,000 special edition physical copies and tens of thousands of digital copies. And what's remarkable is the Kickstarter has about 13,000 backers. So that suggests that more than 30,000 copies, physical copies, were sold after the Kickstarter, right? A lot of times what will happen is your bulk of your sales are your Kickstarter, then it goes down. And this is true of all kinds of companies, right? A lot of like recognizable name companies will tell you that that's the case. And here you're having the opposite, right? Her most recent print run was larger than the print run for the entire Kickstarter. That is super different. And they are running through that really quickly. Combined with her success on her second Kickstarter, which is currently getting close to $2 million with 9 days to left. 9 days left. This shows big interest from the community and the possibility of support for many years versus, you know, that was great and we're done. Kelsey's asked whether she's going to work with traditional alliance type distributors that send out to gaming stores. And she had a really interesting perspective about, I don't know that this is really necessary. And that if a small company can have a direct relationship with the audience, then they can also create a direct connection with the sort of bigger, better stores so that she can just sell directly to stores at a reasonable rate and cut out that 25% you're going to lose to a distributor or thereabouts. And she said, distribution can be raced to the bottom and, quote, I don't want Shadowdark on Amazon.
Yeah, this is just a great story, and it's lovely to hear about the success and Kelsey's path through this over the years. And so,
and she mentioned she may create some type of organized play, giving packets to game stores, something like that. She shared her approach to the Cursed Scroll zines and how she creates and then rolls that into the next Kickstarter. Kelsey echoed comments that Graham Ward made last episode, saying D&D has shifted towards combat and away from the other pillars of play. So she wanted to change that. You know, this current Kickstarter really focuses on exploration and world setting. So it's a great listen, and it's she's just one of those creators that it's fantastic to watch and see what she's doing, right? Because she's really leading so many of us.
Yep, for sure. And we'll go to our creator corner now to talk about Dungeon Drop-ins by Andy Demps and Cobalt Press. At the low, low price of free,
Yeah.
but normally $3.99, this is a cool product written by friend of the show, Andy Demps. Dungeon Drop-ins offers several cool rooms, traps, and tricks meant to be easy to add to a current dungeon you're running. You also get advice on adding factions as rivals and a few magic items. And the drop-ins are really a great idea to add interest to your next dungeon exploration. The link in our show notes to that product on DriveThruRPG. What do we have next, Teos?
Free 5e, an open source D&D alternative. So this is an attempt to make a Creative Commons set of D&D core books, taking what is kind of freely accessible, fleshing out what the rest that you need, and making it accessible so that it's easy to read by screen readers, easy to convert to Braille. So it's affordable and it's open for everyone to build off of. Help us bring D&D to the world, it says. The project is by Wormworks' Dale Critchley, who has worked hard on improving accessibility in RPGs across a number of his projects. Friend of the show, hi Dale. This time he focuses on creating this free comprehensive version of 5e. There are 3 books, a player's guide, DM guide, and monster guide, all planned. And the whole point of the Kickstarter is to fund the editing, the layout, the human-made artwork, all of which will then be in the Creative Commons. So you have until May 1st to back that up.
Mm-hmm. And finally, friend of the show, Old School DM, King of the Papercraft, has a fun kit for those who print out paper buildings as terrain. This kit will let you add 5-inch or 4-inch peaked roofs and has easy to follow instructions on building roofs for your buildings. And that is at cardboard-warriors.proboards.com.
I love
So,
seeing what the builds that Old School DM shares in our Patreon Discord. Is
yeah,
just incredible.
he was on the show with me a long, long time ago talking about paperwork models and so on.
Yeah.
It was a really great interview. So we look forward to more from Old School DM. And that is our news and commentary section.